Hi everyone, I hope y'all are doing very well today and welcome back to the channel. Currently, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is almost 7 years old. Although the game has been out for quite some time, I'm still seeing new players joining Battlefront 2. So to help out some of the new players pick out the right hero or villain to play, I'll be ranking every character in Battlefront 2 from the easiest to the hardest. There are 22 characters in Battlefront 2, and with this ranking, I will start the list with the easiest characters and slowly work towards the harder characters to play. Now, keep in mind that I'm not ranking these characters on how powerful they are, but rather their survivability and learnability for newer players. I'm also going to be breaking up these characters into two chapters, one being for blasters and one being for lightsabers, since they both have unique playstyles to learn. I also want to go into some details of hero stats for any brand new players, so that it'll make a little more sense as I go through this ranking. If you already know most of the basics of stamina and health, then you can just skip past this section in the chapters. So two stats I'll be bringing up quite a bit in this video are stamina and health regeneration. So the easy way to explain stamina is how much you can attack and block with a lightsaber before being exposed to attacks. It'll be indicated by the little bar towards the bottom of your screen by default. Each hero's stamina is different and can be altered by star cards, which is why I'm going to be putting up this chart to explain each lightsaber character's stamina. This chart is going to show the base stats for each lightsaber character. I also have a link to this picture on Reddit as well if you guys want to check that out. Now, the other stat I'll be discussing is health regeneration. To sum this up, it's how much health your character regenerate after losing some of your health. With troopers, you can go back to full health even if you get down to 1% health, but with heroes, you only regenerate a percentage of this, except for Bossk, which I'll get into later. Now, like stamina, health regeneration is different for each hero and can also be altered by star cards. So with all the explaining out of the way, let's get right into the ranking. Starting in the lightsaber category, the number one character that I would always recommend to newer players would be Darth Vader. Now, as most of us probably know, Darth Vader is the most overpowered character in Battlefront 2. Vader is an absolute tank, and he has some of the most broken abilities and star cards out of any other character. The only weakness to Vader I can think of is his slow movement and moderate stamina. Even though he's slow, his middle ability Focus Rage gives Vader an instant buff and counteracts his weakness by providing him with extra health, reduced stamina consumption, damage resistance, and extra damage to lightsaber attacks. His other two abilities can also deal massive damage when used correctly. So if you're struggling with surviving against groups of heroes or rebel scum, Darth Vader is the best pick. His base stats are very forgiving, his abilities can deal massive damage effortlessly, and he can shrug off high amounts of damage like it's nothing. Up next to the light side, the second easiest character to learn would be Luke Skywalker. He has high stamina, super quick health regeneration, and some amazing abilities. Along with this, he has very quick mobility, and his lightsaber combat is very forgiving since he has a very fast attack speed. In my opinion, he's the most balanced character in every game mode. What I mean by balanced is that all of his base stats help him excel at pretty much everything. He can dominate on the offensive and can also play back on defense if needed. Luke's abilities are also amazing since they can stun and knock back enemies, along with his rush giving him amazing mobility. For the newer players trying to understand dueling, crowd control, or awareness on the battlefield, Luke Skywalker is one of the best characters for beginners. Alright, so my third character would have to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, when it comes to Kenobi, his defense capabilities are unmatched compared to other heroes. You can throw armies of droids and a couple of Sith Lords at him, and his stamina would still hold strong. His base stats and star cards are also some of the best for survivability in almost any game mode. Even if you're struggling in a fight, his health regeneration is some of the best out of any other hero, making it so you can survive for a longer period of time. Along with this, if you're ever outnumbered, Obi-Wan's abilities can easily get you out of a pinch. Overall, Kenobi's high defensive capabilities make him one of the best characters when learning all of the basics of Battlefront 2. Next up for the fourth character in my ranking, Count Dooku is the next easiest character to learn. Now, if you're looking at playing more trooper game modes, I would honestly move Dooku 1 or 2 spots above the fourth easiest, because Dooku can really struggle when it comes to crowd control. But if you're looking at playing more hero game modes, Dooku is one of the best duelists. He has a very large amount of health regeneration, some of the best stamina, and abilities that are perfect for dueling. His middle ability Duelist gives him the fastest attack speed out of any other character, along with a damage boost to his lightsaber attacks. Even if you're brand new to lightsaber combat, Dooku can still do some crazy damage if you can get the jump on someone. But as I said earlier, his kit is lacking when it comes to trooper game modes. But if you prefer a more up-close and assassin-like playstyle, Dooku can be an amazing hero for beginners. Learning the basics and advanced techniques of dueling can be achieved much quicker when practicing with Dooku. Next up, for the 5th character in my ranking, I have the chosen one, Anakin Skywalker. Now, in terms of survivability, he has some very powerful abilities that can deal some serious damage, along with amazing crowd control. The only downside I see for newer players when playing Anakin is his stamina, especially if you pair him with his Massive Strike star card. I've seen it happen numerous times where an Anakin is swinging at nothing and completely draining their stamina, and I can admit that it's all part of the learning experience. I did the same thing starting out by swinging at random enemies, being reckless with its stamina, and just getting wiped out by a Vader or a herd of droids. But with all this, I do think Anakin is the best beginner hero when learning stamina usage and comboing abilities. As I said earlier, his force abilities are some of the strongest as well, so even if you struggle with using his lightsaber, Anakin's abilities can still get the job done. Alright, for my 6th character, I have Kylo Ren. Now, if I were to describe Kylo compared to other heroes, I'd say he's a hybrid mix between Luke and Anakin. His stats are very balanced, and he has some great offensive capabilities. But the one factor that I think puts him higher up in difficulty compared to others like Anakin is his abilities. Now, don't get me wrong, his abilities are very powerful, especially when it comes to trooper game modes. It's just the cooldown for his 2 abilities like freeze and pull that can be an issue. Along with this, to get the most value out of him, you need to know how to combo his abilities. The best combo for troopers would be a freeze, pull, frenzy, or a basic attack. And for heroes, being the same with freeze, pull, and then incorporate a jump swing and a frenzy to get an extra bit of damage in. Overall, Kylo Ren is not a bad villain to play, and he can be very strong in the right hands. But for newer players, if you want to practice comboing and learning the basics, Anakin can get much more value. But I will say Kylo's base stats are more forgiving and balanced than Anakin's. Up next, these last 4 characters are going to be getting into the more difficult side of Battlefront 2. So for the 7th character, I have Rey. Now with Rey, I was thinking of putting her one more spot up and having Kylo in the 7th spot, but one thing stood out to me: their abilities. With Rey, she has one ability called Insight, which gives her the location of any enemies near her, along with concealing her from enemy radar. It also grants additional damage to lightsaber attacks. This ability is amazing for newer players because it gives you the opportunity to sneak up and understand the fight you're about to take. Her other 2 abilities are decent if used correctly. Her mind trick, in my opinion, is worse than Obi-Wan's, but it can still provide value, especially with her other ability, Dash Strike. Now with this ability, one issue I see a lot of newer players doing is that they just activate this ability very far away, thinking they're invulnerable to blasters and force abilities. I see Rey as someone similar to Dooku, where she has an assassin-like playstyle. You sneak behind a group of troopers or a hero with your Insight ability, use your Dash Strike along with her mind trick, and rinse and repeat. The difference, however, from Dooku is only one of her abilities can do damage, and if you don't have the situational awareness and map knowledge for how to flank, it's hard to get much value out of her. But I will say her stats are great, and she's one of the only 3 heroes that can have 3 dodges, which is always a plus. Overall, Rey has a fun and unique playstyle, and she can also be used as a support hero for her teammates since Insight reveals enemies to friendlies as well. But there are better options to pick when learning heroes in Battlefront 2. So next up, for the 8th easiest hero to play, I have Darth Maul. Now me personally, after playing Battlefront 2 for some time, Maul is now my favorite hero to play because of his combo potential and his high mobility. He has some of the quickest ability cooldowns out of any other character, making his playstyle much on the offensive. I will say, however, his defensive capabilities are somewhat lacking because of his slow and little health regeneration, along with his moderate stamina. What I see a lot of newer Darth Maul players doing is rushing into a group of heroes or troopers and getting decimated, or they're just sitting back and spamming his abilities, doing tiny bits of damage. While this can be a strategy to learn Darth Maul's playstyle, you'd be better off playing other villains that have stronger abilities and stats. Overall, if you want to learn more about comboing, Darth Maul is a great option, but if you're just starting out mastering his abilities and playstyle, it can be a challenge for newer players. And also, his abilities, for me at least, are some of the buggiest and most inconsistent out of any hero, which definitely isn't suitable for a learning player. Alright, so these last 2 characters were quite a challenge to rank. We have Grievous and Yoda. Now, as some of you may know, I made a post asking what you guys think the most difficult hero is for newer players, and the majority said Yoda. I do agree with this, and let me explain with Grievous first. I will start by saying he is a very hard character to master, especially for newer players. His stamina is some of the worst out of any other character, and his normal attack speed isn't amazing. A newer player going against hordes of troopers or some sweaty heroes would think Grievous is one of the worst, and that's honestly how I felt whenever I first started playing. He has a very unique playstyle, being you have to rotate between abilities to save your stamina, along with learning his jump swing attacks. His claw rush is one of the best when it comes to damage, however, and is really good at combo potential. His other two abilities are decent, but they do require lots of practice and situational awareness. He does also have some pretty overpowered star cards, giving him damage reduction and increased health regen to help his survivability. Along with this, he's one of the only two characters that can increase his basic attack damage with star cards. Overall, once you get the hang of Grievous, you start to understand how powerful he really is, but for newer players, he can feel a little bit underwhelming. If you're just starting out, I'd only pick Grievous if you're wanting to learn stamina management or practicing trying to predict your enemy's dodges. Last but not least, we have Yoda. Now let me clarify first, I don't think Yoda is a bad hero, and he can be very powerful and annoying in the right hands. But for newer players, I think he's the worst. And the reason why is because of his god-awful attack speed. There's some other reasons too, but let's talk about his basic attacks. If you miss one attack, or even try to get multiple swings in, Yoda is exposed to any and all attacks for a good amount of time. With this low attack speed, his damage per second is some of the absolute worst out of any other hero. Even paired with his dash ability, his movement still feels slow. By the time one of your hits land, your opponent still has a decent amount of time to either A, dodge, B, load around into your head, or C, use any force ability because the window to attack is so easy to hit. Now with newer players, from what I've seen, they love swinging their lightsaber at everything they can. Pairing this love with Yoda is just not a good mix, which leads to newer players only wanting to block and use abilities when playing Yoda. This is not a fun way to play Battlefront 2, and no new player wants to lose more than a quarter of their health or get thrown across the map just using a simple attack. And also, thank you to EA for this. They don't even bring up the hidden feature that his middle ability Presence does. Thankfully, his dash ability is unique where he can hit through blocks, but it's not enough to save his awful attack speed. So overall, don't pick Yoda if you're brand new to Battlefront 2. There's so many better options to pick that are more fun and deal lots more damage. To all the Yoda mains out there, I'm sorry, but even for me, I'd never go out of my way to pick Yoda in a Trooper or HVV match. Alright, so now we're going to be going into the blasters category. Same as the lightsabers, the number one spot will be the easiest character to pick, and the last will be the hardest. So with all that, let's get into the number one spot. The easiest blaster character for newer players has to go to Iden Versio. Her kit is pretty much perfect for newer players. Her TL50 blaster can deal serious damage up close, and can pick apart the enemy from a distance. She also has her alt fire that shoots an impact grenade that can wipe out groups of troopers and hit heroes through blocks, so even if your aim isn't the best, you have her alt fire to help out. Along with this, her droid can stun groups of enemies, being very useful against heroes, since once they're stunned, you can empty your entire blaster into their head and take out the majority of their health. She also gets a buff blaster bubble, which, keep in mind, only works against blasters because I've seen some Idens run from lightsabers thinking it'll protect them. And then if you want to take on enemies at far range, she has a pulse rifle which takes some time to get used to, but can be quite powerful. Overall, she's a very playable character for newer players, her blaster is reliable, and she has great abilities, but she can unfortunately be easily countered like other blaster heroes by just dodging her stun droid. Next up, the second easiest blaster character has to go to Leia Organa. Her defender pistol can do decent damage that also comes with a secondary fire that shoots an explosive shot after charging it up. Her abilities and health regen are what really makes her stand out though. Her rapid fire ability can do devastating damage at almost any range, and it stays active for quite some time. She also has star cards that make this ability even stronger by giving her reduced incoming damage and an extended ability time. Her two other abilities are great for crowd control, one being a buffed version of the thermal detonators and a buffed version of the officer's shield. Her grenades can wipe out groups of troopers with ease, and it gives her a fighting chance against lightsaber villains. Along with this, Leia's other ability, her shield, is great when being pressured by groups of troopers, and it can provide health to herself and fellow teammates. Overall, her abilities are fairly easy to use while also being capable of massive damage. Her star cards also provide her with more survivability with increased health regeneration and damage reduction. The only downside I can think of for newer players is landing shots with their defender pistol. For the third easiest blaster hero, I have Boba Fett. Main reason why he's here is because of his jetpack. Having the ability to fly to get in and out of fights will always be a plus for any player. With his blaster rifle, it may not be as amazing as other heroes' blasters, but it can still dish out some good damage. His high mobility paired with explosive rockets can take out large groups of enemies and allow Boba to go toe-to-toe with enemy heroes. I will say the one difficult part of Boba is hitting his shots while flying. Instead of only worrying about horizontal movement, newer players now have to consider vertical movement as well. But this could also be a way to improve aim, making other heroes even easier to use. With his jetpack, Boba Fett can get out of most situations with ease, along with his ability to dodge mid-air. Although his health regen is not the best, his mobility greatly increases his survivability. Up next we have BB-8. Now with BB-8 I have two reasons why I think he's perfect for newer players. One being his small size and quick mobility, and the other being his super strong cable spin ability. When it comes to BB-8, his speed is some of the best out of any other hero. Compared to other heroes besides Palpatine, BB-8 and BB-9E have some of the best dodges. His dodges consist of him speeding up his movement in a certain direction, making him very unpredictable and quick. This is great at weaving in and out of enemy fire, hiding behind obstacles, and traversing the map. Along with quick movement, BB-8's middle ability, Cable Spin, has to be one of the strongest abilities in the entire game. Activating this ability in a hallway surrounded by troopers will completely annihilate all of them. Even against multiple villains, this ability can wear them down with ease. And he comes with the stagger ability as well, Rolling Charge, that can one-shot enemy troopers and knock back villains up close. Plus, even if you're not doing as much damage as your teammates, you can still support them with BB-8's passive ability, Swift Reaction. Overall, BB-8 has some of the best survivability, team support, and abilities out of any other blaster hero on this list. The reason why he's lower than the previous three, however, is because of his lack of range. He's more of an up-close and personal hero, and on big maps, he can be a little bit challenging. For the fifth hero, I'll be giving it to Captain Phasma. With Phasma, her blaster is pretty simple to use, it has great fire rate, it can be fired for extended periods of time, and can do some serious damage up close. Her abilities are amazing for survivability, given her middle ability grants her extra health, and damage reduction with certain star cards. The main reason why she's so high on this ranking is because of her turret. This thing has almost perfect aim, amazing range, and a stun that can stop any enemy in its path. Although this does promote a camping playstyle, it's a great way to help newer players feel safer with the blaster. And if things get drastic and you have many enemies surrounding you, she has a strong melee ability similar to commando droids. Overall, Captain Phasma's blaster is relentless, and she has some great abilities for surviving many encounters. Up next, Han Solo will be taking the 6th spot. With Han Solo, he has the best blaster out of any other hero in the game. His DL-44 blaster can deal incredible damage at any range, with a pretty fast fire rate and little to no recoil. Along with this, his abilities are some of the best at taking on any type of enemy, including troopers and villains. His detonate charge can easily wipe out groups of troopers and deal massive damage to heroes. He also has a knockback charge which one-shots basic troopers, and if that wasn't enough, his middle ability Sharpshooter increases the fire rate of his blaster, trading off for accuracy. So with all this damage, why is he in the 6th spot? It's because his health regen and max health isn't really the greatest. Along with this, a single shot pistol blaster can be a little challenging for newer players, especially with the default settings Battlefront 2 gives you. Thankfully, a star card does grant him an additional dodge, which can be really helpful against villains. But overall, his survivability isn't the greatest if you're unable to land shots with him. Still, even if you are missing quite a bit, his abilities greatly make up for it. Next up, I have Bossk for the 7th easiest hero. Now, his blaster can be difficult to get a hang of, especially when you're trying to snipe with it. However, his short-range primary fire can be very powerful against troopers and heroes. For newer players, however, it may feel a little inconsistent with the wide reticle, but with a couple games of practice, it's pretty easy to get the hang of. His abilities are also very simple and effective, the strongest being his proximity bombs. Slapping this ability down, especially in a hallway, can put an end to any troopers trying to push you and make enemy heroes think twice before taking you on. It's a great defensive ability, especially paired with this toxin grenade that can slowly chip away at the enemy's health. For newer players, I'd greatly recommend using his Name Your Poison star card, which gives him health for standing inside of his gas. Speaking on health regen, Bossk is unique to his character as he can regenerate all of his health, even when critically low. The trade back is a very slow health regen, and no health back on kills. His final ability, Predator Instincts, is amazing at crowd control. He It gives you extra speed, and it lets you see every enemy on the map. This is amazing for newer players since it can let you sneak up on enemies and pick which fights to take. Overall, Bossk is a very simple character to play, and also one with a high skill ceiling. Someone who can master his sniper is quite the force to be reckoned with since he can deal crazy damage at any range. Even for newer players who are still learning to snipe, his abilities are incredibly powerful for surviving any encounter. Alright, for the number 8 spot, I'm giving it to Chewbacca. His bowcaster is very unique as it doesn't need to be cooled like traditional blasters. His blaster bolts also deal explosive damage, which can hit enemy villains that are blocking, making him a threat to villains at any range. Against troopers, he can dominate the battlefield up close and pick apart troopers at long range, even if they're behind cover. However, with Chewbacca and a couple of these next characters, hitting his shots can be a little difficult. Without his abilities, his bowcaster has a very slow fire rate, and missing some of his shots can lead to a lot of health being lost very quickly. However, his abilities do make up for this. His middle ability Furious bowcaster upgrades his weapon, making it shoot 5 bolts instead of 3, or 1 concentrated bolt if you're aiming down sights, and gives him an increased fire rate. This ability can annihilate troopers with ease and can make villains think twice about facing him. Pair this with his shock grenade, you can force enemies still for some easy pickings. And then if you're in a situation where you're surrounded by troopers or cornered by a couple villains, his charge slam is an amazing tool to get out of it. However, I will say, unlike these other characters, Chewbacca relies a lot on his abilities to deal massive damage. And if you're struggling to hit shots with him, he can feel a little bit weak. But thankfully, he does have some of the highest health out of any other character. He does also have some amazing star cards tailored for every game mode. Overall, with teammates to back him up, Chewbacca can be an unstoppable force. But if he's caught in the open with no abilities ready, he can't do much besides just dodge and hope a teammate will come save him. For the 9th easiest hero, I'll be giving it to Emperor Palpatine. Now, I'm going to start with the main issue I see a lot of new Palpatine players do. They use only one-handed lightning, which does little to no damage. Holding down both triggers or buttons will allow him to attack with both hands, doing the most amount of damage. However, using his two-handed lightning attacks requires more aim for it to lock onto a target. And I'm not 100% sure if this is correct, but one-hand lightning does seem to be more lenient on locking onto a target than two-handed lightning. So if you're struggling to lock onto someone or you need to do a tiny bit of extra damage, one-handed lightning is a great solution. Now onto his capabilities, Palpatine has the best mobility out of any other hero in the game, besides jetpack characters of course. His dodges are amazing as he can weave in and out of enemies and cover great distances with ease. It takes some time to understand the technique of dodging, but especially with blaster heroes, once you get it down, he can be pretty amazing. His abilities are decent, with the best being Chain Lightning, which can bounce off numerous enemies close together. I'd say Palpatine is best used for crowd control since all of his abilities are made to slow down and weaken enemies surrounding him. Overall, I think Palpatine can be a fun character to master because of his mobility, but his damage and defense can be a little lackluster in the hands of a newer player. Next up, at number 10, we have Finn. Now, when playing Finn, I always see two outcomes. One, you have a team to back you up to take down the enemy while you'd be providing them extra health and support, or two, you get singled out by the enemy and get demolished because you have little to any damaging abilities. I'm not saying Finn is bad, he's just very situational. His abilities are meant to support his team, with the only damage dealer being Deadeye. Now, don't get me wrong, these abilities can be extremely powerful when matched with a good team and the right star cards, but on his own, he doesn't stand much of a chance. Newer players need a character who can hold their own and not always depend on their teammates. Plus, his abilities need to be used at a certain time to get the most value out of them, which takes time to learn of course. Overall, Finn is a great support character, but he's not the damage dealer, his abilities require timing and practice, and his survivability depends on his team. He's fun if you have friends to back you up, but a nightmare if the enemy singles you out. Up next, the 11th easiest character will go to BB-9E. He's kind of in the same boat as Finn as a support character, but worse. His mobility is definitely much better than Finn's, but he lacks in range and damage. With BB-9E's ability, they're pretty much a downgrade from BB-8's, making him mainly a support for teammates and a counter for enemy blasters. His first ability, Smokescreen, is great for sneaking up on enemies and revealing their location, but that's pretty much all it does. His shock spin is the only damage dealing ability, which causes enemies' blasters to overheat in a large area and pushes back enemies in close proximity. And finally, he has a charge up ability that is the strongest out of all of them, granting nearby allies faster ability cooldowns and prevention from blasters overheating. So he's definitely not the best damage dealer like his counterpart BB-8, but he is the only support character for the dark side. I'm not saying BB-9 isn't fun or easy to use, I just think it's hard to get value out of him, especially for newer players. But if you have a team that's destroying the enemy with ease, BB-9 can be a powerful ally just by following around with his team. But just like Finn, on his own, he isn't able to do much unless you're able to ledge a couple of enemies off the side of the map. Overall, BB-9 deserves more love, and I do think he has some great survivability. It's just hard to get the job done when his damage is little to nothing. Last but not least, the most difficult blaster character to play has to go to Lando Calrissian. Now, in Trooper game modes, his sharp shot ability is the strongest out of any other hero. He can clear an entire room with ease and deal a good amount of damage to any villains in his sight. Along with this, he has a disabler that shocks enemies in a pretty large radius, causing the same effect as Chewbacca's and Iden's stun. It also reveals any enemy locations while also concealing Lando's and his teammates. And then his other ability is just a smokescreen that he can see through with his scope pistol. So with all this, Lando sounds pretty strong. He's got some decent star cards to help with his survivability as well. So then why is he all the way at the bottom? The reason is because of his god-awful pistol. This thing is so bad. Unless you're arm's length away from your enemies, this thing does pitiful damage. The funny thing is, this blaster is called the Night Sniper. At a range of more than a couple meters, his blaster seems like it's just tickling the enemy. Now, in this gameplay, you'll see me firing the blaster at a decent fire rate, so you'll think, oh, the fast automatic fire rate must make up for it. No. This weapon is a single-shot pistol. You have to spam your trigger button to take out a single stormtrooper before they unload their entire blaster back at you. If you're on mouse and keyboard, maybe this hero is less painful to play, but if you're on console, good luck to your controller. And also, his so-called Night Sniper has a stupid amount of recoil for a pistol that does laughable damage. Playing this hero is just so disappointing when you have characters like Han and Leia that can deal damage at even further range with less effort. The only good thing about Lando is his high health and ability to stun villains, along with his glitchy sharp shot ability that can be avoided by dodging or just partially hiding behind a small obstacle. And I know some people may think he's not bad, which I can partially agree with. His sharp shot ability is one of the most satisfying abilities, and you can definitely go on a rampage with Lando, but my thing is, I could have gone on an even bigger rampage with someone like Han or Leia or even Chewbacca with less effort. So if you're just starting out in Battlefront 2 and looking at Lando, good luck. He's the last hero I'd ever recommend to anyone playing in Battlefront 2. And guys, with all that, that's the ranking complete. I hope this video was able to help you guys out, whether you're brand new to Battlefront 2 or looking for a new hero to master. I had lots of fun putting this ranking together, and sorry if it took me quite some time to get this video out. If there's any changes you guys think should be made, feel free to let me know down in the comments. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching.